Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, we just got done hanging out with my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
We say all the time, richest men in town, they're all over the place, literally in the neighborhood. Casey Kelly, what sticks out to you with our time with him?
Well, first of all, when you told me that you were going to have your neighbor as our guest, I'm like, Mike's getting lazy, man. He just walked out front, whoever he saw.
Right, hey, neighbor.
Yeah. But after spending a little bit of time with Casey, I could see exactly why you felt the way that you did, and that why the invitation was made. I mean, Casey is, he's a dad of some young kids, and he is doing some stuff to guide those kids. And I love his thought process, right? He touched on some really important things tonight about, just being honest about how he's approaching his children as they grow up and move into different stages of their lives. And then he spent some time tonight talking about his experience with therapy, which I really appreciated that. I just felt like there's a lot of things that Casey talked about tonight that if you're raising children, or if you have raised children, or if you're around people, this is going to be important.
Yeah, I felt the weight of being a podcast host for the first time maybe in the history of our podcast when he started firing questions back at us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Almost like, hey,
yeah,
you guys talk about parenting all the time. Walk me through this, right? Talking about those stages, right? As some of his kids are transitioning into other aspects of their life and as they get older. So
yeah, I almost kicked him off the show right there. You don't ask us questions. We ask the questions.
We actually have to know stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because our formula is always more of the guest, less of us is a good show.
And that is true. Yeah.
And when the guest starts firing back, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, wait a second.
Who brought this guy? No, I mean, I love what Casey was sharing. So many great things. What I love about it is, sometimes we get in trouble in life when we get into the thick of thin things.
Yeah.
Right. We're running around and we're running around, but we're not spending any time, any quality or quantity of time on things that really matter. But what you get from Casey is he's intentional and he gets it.
Yeah.
Right. He's in the thick of thick things. He's spending time, whether it's driving time, but he's taking advantage of every minute, every second that he has with his wife, Tracee, with their three girls. And I'm a huge fan of the Kelly family. I think that they are an example to a lot of folks. And I think our listeners are going to really appreciate kind of getting some inside information on what makes Casey Kelly tick.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this episode is time well spent. Casey talks about the importance of relationships, and that's a recurring theme with a lot of our guests. But Casey really talks about those relationships with his extended family, with his stepfather, with his cousins, and the impact that's had on him, and how that's kind of shaped him into the man that he is. And I loved that reminder of the importance of our family and the impact they can have on our on how we deal with other people, treat other people, and how we function in life.
Yeah. We get into some parenting back and forth. We get into this importance of being present and allowing for some margin or some space in our lives so that we can feel some internal peace, right? We talk a little bit about anxiety and get into some mental health, both our own mental health and how we maintain that, and how other people and their mental health can impact us. And I think that vulnerability comes to mind. I can see why Casey Kelly would be a good friend.
Yeah, amen. I totally agree. It was a good time tonight, Mike.
Yeah, growth always comes from challenge, right? That was one of the things that that he shared. Control what we can control. All of these things are essential for us to be reminded of as we keep fighting, right? We keep going, we keep doing what we're doing in a quest to be better. So Casey Kelly, thank you for the way you showed up. To the Kelly family, you keep going, right? And I want to echo his answer, and I don't want to spoiler alert. We got to keep some powder dry here, but when we ask him about hope, and he shares his hope that he gets from his oldest daughter, who's 11.
Yeah,
right. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. So I loved it. I hope our listeners enjoy it. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pad of paper, grab a pen. School's in session. Casey Kelly's teaching. And I hope everyone enjoys this episode with Casey Kelly on the Richest Men in Town.
All right, Mike Freeman, what is on your mind, man? What you been thinking about these days?
Let me just throw something out there. Full confession. Are you ready? So this is actually, so I think a while back, Tyler Gould, we had a classic in my opinion, classic episode where the two of us were spitting truth back in the early beginning days of Richest Men in Town. And I think the episode was called Everyone's Got a Side Yard.
Yeah.
I got this little aspect of my life that I have not been very diligent about. And it started, about January 2021 when I went to my last dentist appointment.
Okay.
6 months later, right? Something comes up at work. I got to cancel. Next time I got to cancel. And they're bird dogging me, like Mounties trying to get their man, right?
That's a good dentist.
What's that?
That's a good dentist chasing you down.
Good dentist, right? Yeah. Good dentist. They call it, hey, we just had a cancellation. Can you get in today? Sorry, I can't. And I got some stuff. And I'm like, I don't want you to see my stuff because I haven't seen you in a while, right? So now I'm starting to think I'm going to have 17 cavities, right? In my mind, I've just created this situation where it's like, oh, now I can't possibly go see them.
Yeah.
So finally, I handed it over. Honestly, I handed it over to my executive assistant and said, can you just, I hate to hit you with the personal stuff, but can you just call my dentist and get on the books? Because I gotta get in. So boom, today, a solid 16-month hiatus from the dentist ends and my teeth have been cleaned.
All right.
I'm actually getting bougie.
I
don't know if I told you about this, but the other, maybe 2 weeks ago, Kelly and I, date night, pedicure, brother.
Oh,
pedicure.
Really?
What are your instant thoughts about that?
Like, I feel like, I mean, can I say it? I don't know.
You can say this.
I don't, I don't have a favorable opinion on that. But hey, look, I know.
Highly recommend it. I didn't go with a coat. I didn't go with a finish, right? I just went buff. But and I got to tell you, the lower leg massage rub, that girl was mailing it in. She wasn't even rubbing anything. It was like petting my leg hairs with the lotion. Right?
What I'm wondering is, how does a man who tells me he has strong feelings against mangoes, but he will go get a pedicure? It just doesn't make sense.
Maybe, Jim Rome's got that Reinvention Project podcast, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe I need to try some mangoes. Maybe I got to reinvent myself. Like, here's the thing. I got web toes, right? I thought I'd get a discount, right?
Because they were like, well, this is technically only 4 toes, really.
No, but I was hanging out with a guy that I admire, probably needs to be a future guest on the show. And we were talking and he says, yeah, we got, he's fortunate to have some family in town. So they've got a standing date night appointment. And he's like, man, we just did a pedicure. That was kind of fun. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you should try it. So boom, I put it in play. I tried it. I'm not addicted to the thing. I'm not going to do this thing every month, but it was the novelty. It was kind of fun.
When does it roll into the mani-pedi? Like, when do you do the dual action?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Okay, let's be real. I'm not gonna go back because there was like stuff flying, right? And it's on the ground, and I'm like, I don't even know what, I mean. And then I'm a chatty person, and there was no chatting going on.
Were you and Kelly next to each other?
Oh yeah, and I tried to explain to my person that was helping me that this is my first time, and I'm really nervous and excited. And she's just like, "Can this thing be over with?" Right? Can this thing be over? So I'm kind of going bougie. I did pedicure.
Yeah.
I'm growing my hair out. I got hair product for a little bit.
Okay.
Right? And here's another thing we did. Kelly and I, we went to a teeth whitening event.
Oh, what is this? I mean, I know what teeth whitening is now.
So on Facebook,
what's the event?
this business puts it out there. Hey, we're coming through town in Reading. We're going to be at the Hilton Garden Inn. Sign up. $49. You sit in a chair for 25 minutes and they give you a little kit. Boom. Teeth whitening.
Interesting.
She says mine went up for 4 shades and asked if I was a former smoker. I was like, I just like dark soda. I love me some dark soda.
Oh my goodness gracious.
I'm becoming high maintenance, Tyler Gould.
Yeah,
Right in front of your eyes. And this reinventing process / maybe midlife. I don't know what's going on, but mango papaya, I might have to try it.
Look, I'm all for maintenance, man. I'm all for maintenance. Like you gotta get your teeth worked on. You got to get some whitening going on. I'm for that. I support that. But I think that there's some maintenance that maybe should be done in the privacy of your own home.
Here's the thing too. I didn't have the courage to go in as is to the pedicure. I actually clipped my own toenails before I went in.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you hire someone to come over and clean your house, and you're like, we better clean this freaking thing quick. They're gonna be here soon. I don't want people to know I live like this.
It's so true. So true. Hey, I gotta tell you, I'm excited about where we are with Richest Men in Town. I'm excited about the current stretch that we're in with the guests that we've got. We got another great guest tonight. But I just got to tell you, like, the world is coming our way. I shared with you a couple of thoughts, right? A couple of things that I came across in reading in between episodes. And I think it's, is it Victor Hugo? I got to fact check that, but it's like the idea, nothing's more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Yeah.
I think the richest men in town is that, brother. Right? Like I shared an Inc. article, Inc.com, talking about the benefit of slowing down to speed up.
Right.
And this idea of the beauty of music is not only the notes, but the space in between the notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do we create that white space in our lives? I'm all about that. I'd love to get your thoughts, our guest thoughts on that. And then this idea that the world doesn't necessarily want to sell happiness because happy people don't need anything. And the world's got stuff to sell, right?
Right.
And that thought comes from Matt Haig. And I just kind of dig this that I shared with you a excerpt from a page. And he says, to be calm becomes a kind of revolutionary act, right? To be content with what you have so that the world doesn't have anything to sell you. And to be calm becomes that revolutionary act of swimming upstream. So those two thoughts are very richest men in town, very appropriate. And I'm thinking the world's coming our way, Tyler. They're finally seeing things the way that we see them.
They just have to tune in to the richest men in town.
Tune it in, man.
There's
let's tune into this week. So this week is my guy, right?
Yeah. My
guy, Casey Kelly, is going to be joining us. Casey Kelly is a neighbor. Casey Kelly is the husband of someone that I used to work with in a previous gig. And every time I interact with this guy, higher ground. Every time I interact with this guy, he's tuned into our frequency. You know what I'm saying? Like he's trying to live this, he's a girl dad. He's a dance dad. It's Little League season, right? I think he's coming to us fresh off of like open house at his kid's school. He serves on the site council at his kid's school. Like he's all in. And that's a fun season, right? Like our kids are a little older, so maybe we're looking a little bit in the rear view mirror where he's at. But I dig everything that he's about. I love the intentionality he's living his life with, and I can't wait to bring him in, man.
Well, then let's do it, man. Let's kick the doors open and let Casey in the room.
All right, that's you. You are the almighty host.
Oh wow,
you're the Wizard of Oz here. I think.
I love it, man. Just don't pull the curtain back, you know.
Don't let the power go to your head, though. You know what I'm saying?
Oh man, I'll be booting people out of this room so fast. You know, your head'll spin, man.
Tracee Kelly, welcome to the richest man in town. How are you, man?
Doing well. I'm doing well.
Well,
finished up a wonderful open house at school tonight. It's kind of fun.
All right, give me the highlights. What was it like? This is not your first rodeo, right?
No. It's the first rodeo in a few years though. So and we actually got to go. So they split them. It's a K through 8 school, and they split them in K through 4 does one night, and then 5th through 8th does the other night. And we have never been to the 5th through 8th night, and I had no idea that they put on this event called the Wax Museum, where I believe it's 6th graders, and they all choose a character from Greek mythology, and they act out what they're known for. And so you walk up to them, and they've got a sign, and it says "Do a push-up to activate," or say a term and to activate, and they give you this little spiel. And it was one of the coolest things I've seen. It was very interesting. And some people sold it and did well, and others did. You know, they were very quiet, but it was a lot of fun to check out.
That's awesome. How many people were actually doing the push-up to activate, and how many could actually do the push-up?
I saw 3 people do it.
Okay.
But hold up. That's kind of brilliant, right? Because if the kid does the push-up to activate, he's not going to be very busy performing that night because no one's going to activate it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that was a smart kid right there.
That's well played.
That's kind of what I figured, because it was like, this guy is not getting the traffic that a lot of the others were. They just had to say this.
Right. So. That kid is a future... he's a rising star. He's a rising star for sure.
He's gonna do well at something. I'm not sure what yet. He's gonna do well at something.
I love it.
Well, hey,
man.
we appreciate you carving out some time. You are a busy guy with family. Talk to me a little bit about family, names, ages. Break it down for me. What's your radar screen look like?
So I have 3 kids. I have an 11-year-old. They're all girls. I have an 11-year-old daughter named Sophia. She is my first. She was born on Christmas Eve. She was a complete and utter surprise, both when we found out we were having her and when she was born. Second one is Annie. She is 6. She is very different from Sophia in every way possible, but still amazing. And then we have a 3-year-old named Hannah, who is the one that I can probably say is one of the reasons that I have grown so much as a human being, because she is a handful as well. So
that's awesome.
I just want to just make sure that we all understand that growth is sometimes a result of handfuls, right?
Yes, absolutely. Growth always comes from a challenge, in my humble opinion. And
growth is attached to patience, unfortunately, right? That's usually how it works. That's awesome, man. That's a busy time.
Yeah, and it has been jam-packed for the past 3-4 weeks. Anywhere from, my oldest is on a dance team, so the oldest and mom are going out of town for dance competitions or conferences, and I'm staying in town because the middle child's on a little league team. And we're tag teaming different events because there's just not enough hours in the day or people to take care of it. So
you're not only a dance dad, you have talented dancers with talent that takes them out of town. Because I always tried to put, like, hey kids, develop your talents, but the second that you're developing of talents requires me to leave town for the weekend, we're gonna have a conversation. Right.
It's actually, so Did you ever play on a travel team for baseball, football, anything like that?
No.
The travel experience is worth it by itself. It's not the game. It's not the tournament. It's not the event. It's just hanging out with your team at dinner or in the pool and running around the hotel like a crazy person. And that is the sole reason that I was like, if she wants to do this, she should go for it, because those are the memories that she's going to remember, and she's absolutely there. So it's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that qualifier, right? If she wants. So as parents, sometimes we kind of transmit what we want them to be involved in, maybe because we were, or maybe because we weren't successful and we're trying to live vicariously through our kids. But like that idea of like allowing them to express what they're interested in, and when they're not interested anymore, trying to be open to that, right? Listening.
For us, and I think this is an extremely important thing, is they have to do something. They have to have some sort of extracurricular activity that they want to do, whether it be dance, baseball, riding bikes, anything they want to set their mind on. Bowling. I honestly don't care what it is.
But bowling, I mean,
I would love for them to do the things that I love to do, but I have not been able to check that box off yet. But I will support them in whatever they want to do, just because it's important for me for them to have those experiences, because I feel like that's enriching in itself.
Yeah. So
it gives them just more than, I go to school and I do my work and then I come home and
but Casey, let's be real. Sometimes those decisions to stop doing something have repercussions that affect other people, because Tyler, the rest of the story is the Kellys were the Freeman's Girl Scout cookie hookups, right? Like Casey's wife, Tracee, was like the Girl Scout cookie, like their garage was the hub.
Nice.
We were a cookie warehouse.
Warehouse for a couple of years, where it was just like, if I need a fix, I can jump down. I could run down to the court, run down a block and be like, hey, and I'm shaking, right? Like I need some Thin Mints, and it would be there. And then all of a sudden it wasn't there, and I had to find
right up.
That was rough.
That was probably one of those tender mercies, right?
It was trying.
The cookies go away. You come down off that sugar high. You start to get a little more healthy. Things.
You realize you're at bottom, right? Awareness is the first step.
That's right, man. That's right. Yeah.
But I didn't stay without a hookup very long, right? I have moved on to another.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to avoid. You got people down here driving cars with signs on their cars. You could Venmo them straight from your vehicle, and they just throw them out their window in your back seat, right?
Okay, so Tyler, I'm gonna be curious to see what Casey thinks about some elements of our conversation leading in before he joined the conversation. Okay.
All right,
Casey, no judgment. You don't have to be on Team Mike or Team Tyler. You can go your own way. But I recently did a date night with Kelly Freeman that involved both of us receiving pedicures. What's your thought on males receiving pedicures?
I'm very pro pedicure.
Pro pedicure.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience?
I have. I've only had one.
Okay.
I'm very pro my feet as a whole. I like, because this is going to sound weird.
I'm already weirded out, so keep going. Keep going.
Moving to Reading did a number on my feet, and it's only because I have to wear work boots at work, and then I prefer flip-flops everywhere else. And so it goes from this sweaty swamp foot area to this dry, arid desert. And the calluses that formed on the back of my feet are disgusting. So I'm very pro someone taking care of that for me. And
we don't need to go into the details of how they take care of it, right? But they do go away, Tyler.
Well, here's the bigger problem that I have
stuff is flying and stuff.
I don't want to walk into a room with a bunch of dudes getting their feet worked on. Like, I don't want to see that. It needs to be done in the darkness of night, somewhere hidden away. Now, if there's a warehouse somewhere, like you go down a back alley, you turn in about midnight, you knock three times on the door.
Secret knock.
Yes. And somebody lets you in and it's dimly lit and they take care of that business there. I support you guys doing that. I support that. But if I have to walk up to the burger shack next to the fingernail joint and I see a bunch of dudes in there getting their feet worked on.
Hey, those chairs are fancy and they got the massaging and the heat and the relaxation.
And you can go early morning. I mean, if you're worried about seeing somebody early morning, late at night, no one's in there.
Look, I'm with you, but I do support your freedom to choose.
Well, hey, Tyler, Casey, before you jumped in, I was just talking to Tyler about our relationship and the experiences that I've had working with you. I worked closely with your wife, Tracee, and every interaction that I've had with you, I appreciate how you're living your life. I appreciate your intentionality. I appreciate your drive to be better. And that's what this podcast is about. And unfortunately, I take mental notes when I interact with people. And as we come up with a podcast about trying to live rich lives, I see the life you're living, and I'm just like, get on my podcast, Casey Kelly. I gotta know more. So we really do appreciate. I know you've got a million things happening with family, and I really appreciate the time you're going to give us tonight, so we can get into it a little bit.
No problem. I like I said, I was excited. I didn't expect to ever get an invite because I have listened to the podcast and I have seen your previous guests, and I don't necessarily know that I'm the caliber of person that goes on here, but I
Hold on, Tyler, let me stop. Have you heard that before, Tyler Gould?
What are we? How many episodes in are we? 107. I've heard it 107 times. But I love that. I mean, honestly, this whole podcast is that's the spirit of the podcast, right? Is that it's good conversations with people that are trying to do their best, and you know, if you were coming on here, Casey, trying to sell us something, then it would be a different animal, right? But you're here because, and I trust Mike, you know, completely when he says, "Hey, Casey's living his life the way that we could probably learn some things." I'm all about it. Sign me up. Let's sit down with Casey.
So, Casey, let me throw something out there to you. So the thinking is, Tyler and I, we're shooting texts back and forth in between leading up to this episode, just what's on our mind and what's going on in life. And I came across this article and I just wanted to share it and get your opinion on something. All right. Or maybe even get some practical advice from you on maybe some strategies that you're using. I was teaching a class the other day and I had a group of kids and I wanted them to be working on something. I wanted some music playing in the background. And I played some music from my phone. Unfortunately, my phone is 1.5 speed because when I listen to podcasts, I kind of go 1.5 speed. Tyler, we sound really good at 1.5 speed, just a pro tip. But the music that was playing was 1.5 speed. And the kids were like, "Hey, something's going on with this music, Mr. Freeman," right? So I checked it out and I slowed it down. And that got me thinking about just the pace of life, right? And the beauty of space. And I was reading this article on Inc.com, and the author says part of what makes music work is the space between the notes. Without these pauses, we have a hard time making sense of exactly what we're hearing, and the effect is just a lot less profound. If your day-to-day feels anxiety-ridden and noisy, consider how adding white space might help you come back into alignment with the most important things. So to Tyler Gould and Casey Kelly, can you give me advice on how you might add white space in your day-to-day?
Well, I actually do that regularly. Typically every lunch hour that I take, I give myself a 10-minute meditation session for that reason, to just kind of go, okay, I need to reset. I need to slow down. I need to, because anxiety was and is a very large part of my life for a myriad of different reasons. And understanding that anxiousness doesn't really fix any problems, it just gets your blood pressure up. It was a big moment for me in going, okay, well, how do I battle this? And there's a number of techniques that you can use, but one of the best ones, in my opinion, is just simple meditation. And I'm not saying I'm a master of meditation. I still don't know that I've ever entered a meditative state. What I have done is taken a short nap a few times, but there is definitely a calming sense from breathing and focusing solely on the breath. And if something comes into your head, trying to refocus back, not necessarily pushing it away or not focusing on it or anything, but just refocusing on your breath so that you can reach that kind of calming state of where you need to be. And that's a huge thing for me on a daily basis. I mean, I don't do it on weekends because my kids and wife are around. I like to do it when no one else is around. I take, I turn everything off, turn the TV off, set the phone down, and just set a timer for 10 minutes and focus on that. And I mean, there are other ways that I do it throughout the day of, when problems arise and I can feel my different emotions boiling, whether it be anger or anxious.
Let's let listeners in. What do you do on a daily? Because I think that's an interesting juxtaposition of that meditative state and trying to create some of that white space with your day-to-day activity.
I mean, I don't know how in depth you want to get here, but ultimately I'm a supervisor for maintenance for a cable company. Basically, I manage the network on the poles and the guys that drive the bucket trucks. It's my job to make sure that network is up, working well, and performing.
So when it isn't,
and when it isn't,
your phone's blowing up.
That's when my phone's blowing up. Like, for example, I don't know if you remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a Verizon outage.
Yep.
I had people trying to get a hold of me going, is this a localized problem? Is this a nationwide problem? And when there's an outage in the cell tower range and you cannot get information in until you get to a hard line, all you can think is the worst. And it's, it creates this high anxiety moment of, oh man, what went down? How am I going to troubleshoot and find it so that we can fix it? And those are the moments where I very quickly have to take a moment for that white noise.
Yeah.
And it's not so much a meditative state, because usually I'm driving somewhere and I can't really focus on going into a meditative state because I have to make sure I'm not going to run into somebody. But it's more along the lines of, there's a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that a previous boss of mine put me on. And the one major one that I remember big time is control what you can control. And when you break down a situation, regardless of what that situation is, there's not a lot you can control about any situation. Really, the only thing you can control is how you handle yourself in reacting to that situation. And so on that daily basis, when things go wrong, that's the very first thing my mind clicks to is, what can I control about this situation? What do I know about this situation? How do I need to attack it? And that right there is the most calming effect. The other piece to that is, I read somewhere, and I don't know where, it was years and years and years ago, but it was a rule of tens policy. Is this going to matter in 10 minutes? Is this going to matter in 10 days? Is this going to matter in 10 years? And so when I realize something major has gone on and I've gotten through the pack of, I've unpacked what I can control about it and how I go about moving forward and troubleshooting it, it becomes this sense of, because the overall response is, get it going, get it fixed, get it working, get it going, whatever it takes, do it now. Why can't you be more efficient? Why can't you be faster? And everything. And taking that, okay, is this going to matter in 10 minutes? Yes, it is. Is it going to matter in 10 days? No, because I'm going to have it fixed by then. I'm gonna be through all the meetings of what can make it more efficient and whatever. Yes, I do have to take notes, and I have to make sure that I'm doing things to the best of my ability, but this is going to pass. All things will pass regardless of how bad they are. And those two pieces of controlling what I can control and formulating a plan to it's going to get fixed, really slow me down. And it's absolutely something that was needed, because 4 years ago when I started this position, my technicians were like, this guy's going to have a heart attack if he doesn't settle down a little bit. Because, I mean, they were looking at me like, okay, he's literally just walking in circles going, okay, what do we need next? What do we need next? What do we need next? And now, just yesterday, I had an outage. And rather than, panicking and freaking out, it was like, okay, what do we know? What do we not know? How do we close the gaps for what we don't know? And then what do we need to fix the problem? And, it was like 86 minutes from time that we were told there was a problem to time that the problem was fixed. And that's how things have been going for us, with these attitudes built in of just, let's take the emotion out of it. Let's not worry about the back end. Let's get it fixed. And then we'll worry about the back end to see if there's anything we need to learn. If there is, great. If there isn't, then we move on. Yeah,
it's going to get fixed. I was recently reading something in this Tyler Gould, him, Henry B. Eyring. He's older, right? And he's thinking back on when he was young and married. He had, at the time, he called it his biggest challenge and test in his life. From where he sits now in his life, looking back, he's like, oh, that was huge in the moment. But now, from where I'm at, I've seen so many bigger tests and challenges, right? So that rule of 10 is powerful, because as you go through the 10-minute, 10-day, 10 years, there's going to be very few things that are actually going to be significant when you hit that 10-year mark.
Right. And those are the things that you need to place the biggest focus on. Is because that is the family and the friend relationships that you want to keep around. So applying that to your personal life is extremely important.
Yeah, right. Tyler, thoughts on creating white space? Any strategies or pro tips you got?
Well, shoot, man. I mean, I think it's key, right? I think it's important. For me, it's about connecting with something bigger than me, right? And I think that's important for me when I'm thinking about, how do I find time? How do I slow things down, right? I work a lot, and I drive a lot in my car for work. I keep radio off and just think about what I'm faced with, right? But a lot of times, honestly, I mean, yeah, I'm thinking about what the next issue is, or the next concern might be. But for me, creating white space is about connecting with something bigger than me, right? Yeah. And that's my focus when I'm looking at that.
When I think even the quiet car,
100%,
right? Turn the radio off. Turn the radio off every once in a while and get in that space where you're able to process your things and maybe even turn thoughts out to other people.
I mean, I've had profound experiences in the quiet car driving, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's powerful. All right. So the other thought that I had was this revolutionary idea. And I shared a quote with Tyler, and this thinking is, I'm just going to read this, Casey, and I'm dying to get your thoughts on it. All right. It comes from Matt Haig, and it says, the world is increasingly designed to depress us. Happiness isn't very good for the economy. If we were happy with what we had, why would we need more? How do you sell an anti-aging moisturizer? You make someone worry about aging. How do you get them to buy insurance? By making them worry about everything. How do you get them to have plastic surgery? By highlighting their physical flaws. How do you get them to watch a TV show? By making them worry about missing out. How do you get them to buy a new smartphone? By making them feel like they're being left behind. To be calm becomes a kind of revolutionary act. To be happy with your own non-upgraded existence To be comfortable with our messy human selves would not be good for business. True or false?
I say 100% true. I mean, that almost feels like the capitalist machine. I mean, it's always going, it's always turning, it's always, and I mean, I have succumbed to it so many times of, oh man, that feature sure would be nice. Why don't I, spend the extra $1,000 to upgrade, and it can be on anything, but yes, the concept of being happy with what you have is such an amazing, and it's such an amazing frame of mind to get into that. And it's such a hard frame of mind to get into, in my humble opinion, because you have to cut out so many pieces of this world that we live in. You have to cut out social media. You have to cut out advertising. You have to cut out, and all of those pieces are so engrossed in everything we do. You drive down the road, you see billboards. You turn your radio on. You have ads. We're on a podcast right now on probably coming through on $800 phones. I mean, they're just, and there are things that can be enriching. And I mean, this is a conversation I've had with my wife, is I love my smartphone, but there are absolutely things I hate about it. I hate the social media aspect of it. I actually had to delete my Facebook and Instagram apps so that I wouldn't click on them all the time. And I mean, it just stupid clicking of, hey, I looked at it 3 minutes ago. Oh, I wonder if anything's happened in that Oh, no, nothing happened. Why did I even bother? And just the negativity in media as a whole of, if we keep a person fearful, they will be more obedient, or we can control them a little bit better. Just, it doesn't sit well with me, and I haven't been able to completely give it up, because there are some very enriching things about a smartphone. And I mean, it can be as simple as Google Maps. It can be as simple as podcasts, because I mean, there are so many informative and good podcasts across an entire spectrum of subjects: comedy, life help, everything. And they can be so great. And then there's also these massive negatives. And it's just one of those things that I've always pondered. Do these equal out? Do they negate each other? Is one stronger than the other? And it's a very hard concept to be content with what you've got.
Well, and I would say what that reminds me of is that the money is in the disease, not in the cure, right? That's the reality, right? So, and I think that this idea of contentment is it's a battle, because remind me again, Casey, ages of your kids?
11, 6, and 3.
Okay, 11, 6, and 3. Anybody have a smartphone in that house other than you and your wife?
So my daughter has a iPod. It's not a smartphone, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, right, I've got kids that are 22, 20, 18, and 12. And I would tell you that for us, it's interesting, right? Because we're adults. We're good at looking at things supposedly and finding balance, right, in those things. But when you've got youth that have those tools in their hands, they're being sold every second of every day that something is better than what they have, right? So the battle, right, is
or somebody's
better than who they are. Yeah, absolutely. So the battle is really is really about, one, and this is always, my wife and I have this conversation all the time, like, if we, meaning she and I, can't find balance with these things, right, then the kids are never going to find balance with those things. So we're constantly looking at ourselves like, what do we have to do? Put them away, lock them up, put them outside the room, whatever we're doing, so that the kids fall into that same those same habits, or we're teaching them those same habits. But Contentment, man. I mean, that's a battle. And that's a battle that I think as your kids get older, and Mike, you can speak to this, it's hard. It's a hard fought battle for sure. But
I can't tell you the number of times like Casey, I've wrestled with it, and I look at screen time and I look at metrics and I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I dedicating that amount of time to this device? And I start dropping these apps, right? And then it comes time to drop a new episode of The Richest Men in Town. And it's just easier to do from your phone. So then I reinstall the app. But I was with somebody the other day, I'm hanging out in their beautiful backyard or having a little barbecue, a little event and get together. And he informs me he doesn't have a TV in his house. And I was like coveting that just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And like right now, I'm with you guys, right? Tyler, we've sacrificed Celtics games before to record Richest Men in Town. Tonight, right now, I'm sacrificing Warriors playoff games, right? And I can't imagine the Freeman house without a TV. But he started spinning. He started telling me some of the things that they do, like play board games, right? Read books and have conversations. And I started looking at like, number one, get on my podcast, right? But number two was like, that could really add some cool flavor to my life right now. Much, much more than what that TV adds to my family right now.
Yeah, the idea of balance, man. And Mike, you and I have talked about this a lot. That balance is a bit of a myth, but that idea of trying to strike this perfect balance is tough, because there's always going to be something that's going to replace that, right? I mean, even with my own kids, and they all play sports and they've played sports for years, on all different levels of teams, and even then, there's been times in the midst of that where I'm like, yeah, we gotta pull this back. We gotta hit the brakes, man, because it becomes the thing that they obsess over, right? And it starts to become, this is more important than anything that's going on in life. It's more important than family. It's more important than friends. This is everything. And I think when you start to see that, especially as a parent, when you're watching that, you're like, okay, somewhere along the line, I let this thing become all. But it's a
teeter-totter, right? Like
it totally
value.
Is. It has a ton of value.
Like I'm with Casey. They got to be doing something. They've got to be
doing something. Absolutely.
Develop some talents. Find some things you're passionate about. But as parents, we just got to watch that teeter-totter and make sure it doesn't. It goes from this thing is adding value, and it doesn't swing the other way to, well, we've just lost all perspective now.
You know how many times I've had that conversation with my kids, like, a hard thing happens at a game or whatever, and they're freaking out. And I'm like, hey, remember, this doesn't matter. This thing just doesn't matter, right? I mean, it's good. It's good for us. It's good, like, mentally and physically. It does some good things. But in the grand scheme of what this life is, us melting down about this thing isn't going to get us anything, right? I mean, it's that we almost.
But that moment gives you a lesson, right?
100%. It does.
You can apply to other aspects of your life. But you're right. In the overall scheme of things, kind of go into that rule of 10. Hey, 10 years from now, what is this? 10 minutes from now, you're going to be at the pizza parlor with your friends, and it's a done thing. It's done.
Well, and it's a teenage kid looking at a phone saying, hey, this person's better than me, or they've got better things than I have, or whatever. And, at the end of the day, that's that whole idea, at least in our house, the conversation constantly about what are we grateful for, and why are we grateful for it, right? Because if we can start to circle back to those things and have a discussion about, I'm grateful for these things. And then you start to realize that the things that you're really grateful for have nothing to do with what's popping up on your screen over here, right? And I think that's a big deal. But that's a hard balance to strike. Like you said, it's a teeter-totter that seems to bounce up and down quite a bit.
Well, it ties back to that white noise. I mean, those are distractions. Those are the things that are creating the noise.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you have to pull back from them and go, I need to take a break. I need to go outside. I need to do something that I know I love versus get myself spun out about the whatever is online and being spun out about right now.
Right. And I think that's the hard thing, right? Because when your kids are young, like when I remember my kids were young, it was like you're just kind of like cultivating the excitement of life, right? You're like, hey, you know, find what you're good at, find what you enjoy, find what you love, and do those things. And you kind of get them psyched about those things. And then as they get older, you're like, now let's talk about balance here, right? Let's talk about what's really important. Let's talk about how we want to, you know, what we want life to really look like and how we're going to make it look the way we want it to, you know? And that's,
and it gets wrapped up in that. We talk a lot, Tyler, about identity.
Yeah.
You know, and really when it comes down to it is those things, we got to be really careful about what is going into our kids' idea of who they are.
And I would say too, we got to be really careful about what goes into our idea of who we are, right? Because, you know, I was having a conversation with someone the other day and they were like, you know, I want to make sure that my kids, and it was all about like, I got to make sure that I'm controlling what my kids are consuming. And I said, are you controlling what you're consuming? Right? Because I mean, it's the same principle applies, but sometimes we like to think that, well, we're adults, that doesn't apply to us. But the reality is everything that I'm talking to my kids about today, those are the same things I'm trying to master myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that that's a powerful thing as your kids get older. Casey, one of the things that I've really enjoyed is just normalizing the struggle with my kids. You know, when you're talking to kids about the things that are tripping them up, it's like, guess what? That tripped me up yesterday.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, it's all right.
I've been there. Yeah. And it was painful, but guess what? The page turns, the wheel turns, right? All of these cliches, right. Life moves on and you learn from it, hopefully.
So when did your children, because I feel like our oldest is now entering this world of hormones and puberty and, you know, the next step in childhood.
Yeah.
You know, how did you guys deal with those things? How did you move from basically one thing to the next? Because that seems to be something I'm struggling with her is just, you know, I don't know how to deal with the mean girls and I don't know how to deal with the social piece of it because it was different for me. You know, I'm a boy, she's a girl. It's just a very different thing. And since you guys have older kids, you might be able to kind of shift.
Oh, Tyler's got this one in spades. Go for it.
Oh, please. I have a 12-year-old right now. I'm trying to figure it out, man. It's like every time with every kid, I'm like refiguring it out. You know, honestly, and I'm not very good at this, Casey, but you know, the good news is I think all of us have wives that are really good. Right. And so I've been blessed in that regard and that my wife is really good. But the one thing that that I'm learning still is that I have to be an empathetic listener to especially that 11-year-old turning 12 or 12 going 13. That's where I'm at, because the things that they're dealing with, they look at them like they're life-altering, life-ending things. And I know it's nothing. Like, this is garbage. You shouldn't even be thinking about this. We move on and it's over, right? And that's typically that in my mind. That's my
Don't take that approach.
In my mind, that's my response. But it's like, yeah. But I'm trying to be a more empathetic listener and just acknowledging that, hey, what you're dealing with is important and it's hard and I get it. And, you know, and I want to, you know, help you kind of get through that by understanding where you're coming from. And look, I say that and it sounds really good, but I'm really not that great at it. I'm working on it. And I've got 4 kids and I've screwed it up 3 times. I'm trying to get it good on this last one, you know? So
well, I think part of the key there of listening is that it is different. You know, like
absolutely.
You go back, number one, I mean, obviously, dudes talking about, you know, puberty in girls. That's gonna be
100%.
That's going to be a little challenging, but I think it is different in 2022 compared to like our own experiences. So that listening is really valuable. But I tell myself, I've convinced myself, and I don't know if it's true. I've actually seen research showing that what I'm about to say isn't true in different aspects of kids' lives, but our voices matter.
100%.
Like what mom and dad have to say matters. And I think that it is important that we step into that role, and we don't wait for them necessarily to understand and appreciate how much we matter. Right? Like my dream, my thought is I'm going to be a consistent voice in my kid's life. And when it's a mess and when their life's in a little bit of a blender, the consistent thing that they can always grab onto is what dad has told me about me, and I think that really does matter. And I think that we talk about hinge moments on this show a lot. And I think some of those conversations are going to be hinge moments where it's like that, that one time dad said or mom said, and they keep kind of spiraling and going back to that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I agree with that 100%. And I think the other thing I hope is that, my goal is I want my kids to be able to say, I saw my dad live a certain way. Right. And that was the model of how I want to live. I think a lot of times there's words that, that I can't come up with, but I can live a certain way and I can model that, but it's hard, Casey, tell me, in your experience at the beginning stages of this, what's your approach with your oldest?
So my approach has always been from a truthful standpoint. If she asks me a question, I've always tried to give her a truthful answer, regardless of age. Obviously age appropriate, but sure. It's always come from a place of, I want you to understand, because I feel like if I can teach you how to logically think about something, you can get through anything. And the thing I'm concerned about that and about this whole situation is the emotion that is going to start entering it, drawn from whatever she's going through. Because I remember the days of just being an angry young man and being angry for no apparent reason. Like, hearing that it could be being angry over episode 1 of Star Wars when it came out. Just, oh yeah, I can't believe that they hired this little kid to be Anakin, and this is how he acted it out. And it's like, this makes zero sense in the scheme of things, but I'm gonna be angry about it.
Yeah.
And that's just a quick example that's kind of funny, but there are so many more that are absolutely serious that, as I'm older and I can see it through aged eyes that understand it a little bit better and go, the emotion behind all of that didn't need to be there. You could have looked at it a much different way and come to a much safer conclusion.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm worried about, is those rose-colored glasses that create that emotion that blinds everything, that just creates, whether it be love or hate or anger or, just whatever, just that you feel so strongly that can throw the logical thought out.
Yeah. I think it's interesting though. You were talking earlier about sort of your process of meditation and of finding white space, right? I mean, honestly, that's been something that especially with my youngest, that we've had a lot of conversations about, the value of being able to recognize when you're feeling a certain way and to step out of that for a second and kind of
zoom out.
Yeah. Right. Zoom out and kind of, gather yourself a little bit and then step back into it, and try to approach things with a little bit of a more level head. because, you know, I've got 4 kids and they're all so different. Like every one of my children has reacted differently to the same thing, right? They're all so very different. And my youngest is very emotional, you know, very emotional. So that, you know, for me, it's been, how do we step out of it? How do we take a breath that we're out of it and then step back into it? Not avoid it, but kind of level head it. And I loved your, you know, Casey, you talk about meditation, and I feel like if somehow we could instill that skill into our young kids, that's a powerful thing for them to be able to recognize that.
If only schools taught social emotional learning strategies, right? But that breathing, Casey's talking about that breathing. Yeah. That's it. The breathing forces you to come to the present.
100%.
Right? Come to the present. Like Casey was talking about with that meditation and allowing thoughts to kind of flutter across your sky like clouds a little bit, right? Like don't dwell in things and let it go. But that breathing, if you focus and you come back to that, it's always right here, right now, right?
And I think too, like your examples of like, hey, as a young person, this is how I felt, you know, certain times about certain things. Going back to what you said, Mike, earlier, I feel like, I mean, I share a lot of that stuff with my kids. You know, I share a lot of stuff like, hey, when I was your age, this is where I was at, and this is what I was thinking, and this was what I was doing, and don't be like that. You know what I mean? But you know, how can we avoid some of that? You know,
and we've talked before, Tyler. Like, I love that idea of modeling, and like, hopefully they're watching us, and hopefully we're walking. But when we mess up, right? When we let emotions, we can model that apology, right? We can model 100%. that, hey, I messed up. I got to make it right. Because in my mind too, I want my kids to have a pretty clear understanding that dad is never a wrong time to do the right thing kind of guy.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you might be emotional, but the way you reacted, you hurt that person's feeling. Is that right? No, that's not right. Then what are we going to do? We got to go back and fix it. Right. We got to go back and make it right.
I like that a lot. That is something that I have tried to instill in myself with my children, with pretty much everybody, is if I feel I'm in the wrong, I want to fix it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't something I saw a lot of growing up. And that was very important to me when I had children, was to say, listen, I'm not going to be perfect all the time. I'm going to try to be better each time because I'm going to realize my flaws. But when you deserve an apology, you're going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, hey, I was just gonna say, Mike, last night, I stepped in it last night, you know, I can be a little snarky at times, you know, and, there was a pair of sweatpants being worn in my house. Now, I don't know, we can get, that's a whole different thing. I made a snarky comment about that, and I stepped in it, man. And you know, and I sat down.
Not a lot of cherishing going on when you're bagging on sweatpants.
No, it was not a good look for me. And
hopefully you weren't wearing sweatpants while you were bagging on someone else wearing
sweatpants.
No,
I wasn't, as a matter of fact. But I was sitting down listening. Okay, so I sat down after I'd said it, and I knew I stepped in it, and I was watching the basketball game, right? And then I thought, oh man, this is not where I want it to be.
You were probably watching it alone.
I was, yeah, 100%. And then I had to walk into the other room and make amends with, you know. But I think that you know, to your point, Casey, that's important, you know, and that's something that I'm not great at, but I'm cognizant of it, you know, that I want to be better at that, because I'm with you. When I was a kid, that wasn't modeled, you know. You kind of got the rough side of the stick, and that was how it was, and no one ever said, hey, sorry about that, right? So yeah. So
hey, Casey, let's go back, right? So this whole little project is patterned a little after George Bailey's life, and it's a wonderful life, and we love that. We love that journey that George goes through, but it starts in Bedford Falls in a frozen pond, right? So take us back a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about where you grew up, what life was like.
So I grew up in Eureka, California. It's about 3 hours east of Redding, where we're all sitting, or west, sorry, not east. It's on the coast. It was a wonderful place to grow up. It has gone downhill, in my opinion. I mean, there's still certain aspects of it that are absolutely beautiful and wonderful, but there's a lot of dirt and just no fun there.
Home of the lumberjacks.
Home of the lumberjacks. It basically, I have an older sister. I've got a younger brother. My older sister, my mom's been married 3 times. My older sister and I are from her first marriage. Second marriage, I had 2 stepbrothers that lasted a couple of years. And she's now, after the second marriage, she never wanted to get married again. And then she met this guy, and they were together like 13 years. And he had a son. That's who my little brother is, from his previous marriage. And they were together 13 years, and they just decided they wanted to get married. And they've been married ever since. It's the longest marriage she's ever had. But he has been around since I was, I don't know, 8 or so.
So he's the guy.
So he's the guy. I had a very good relationship with my biological father for a lot of years. We did have a falling out when I was about 12, 13. But both of them are born and raised in Eureka, just like I was. My mom is one of 11 children. My dad is one of 8 children.
Wow.
So big families are kind of a big deal in my world. I have a billion cousins. I think I added it up once. It was like 43 or 45 or something like that on just my mom's side. And I was very close with the majority of them. I had an aunt and uncle that lived, a mile away from me, and I had another aunt and uncle that lived half a mile away from me. And so their kids were all very close in age. And it was honestly a great place to grow up. It was a great environment to grow up in. We didn't have, a lot of anything, but my mom was very adept at making things work, because for her entire life, you could have a lot of everything, but when you have 11 kids, it's not much.
Yeah.
And so they were very good. My mom was very good about just making things stretch and making things work. And it was a very interesting way to grow up. Like, she would hem my pants for me, and I was the only kid that I knew that would get that. She made my family is very
builds character.
Yeah, builds character. My family is very focused around food. My grandfather's mother owned a bakery down in Anaheim, and so there is a sense of there's just this sense of family in knowing how to cook on that side. And this is all my mom's side. I wish I was closer to my father's side of the family, but it just there's a lot of issues there, and I mean we can get into them a little bit, but knowing how to cook was a big deal on my mom's side of the family. My mom was an excellent cook and an excellent baker, is an excellent cook and an excellent baker. And she learned that from her father, who, I mean, basically we'd do these family reunions that were called the Colossal Campout, because it'd be all 11 of their kids and all billion of their grandkids. And, it was a big deal to make biscuits and gravy for breakfast, and to have orange rolls, and to, my grandparents milled their own wheat to make their bread when they were older.
Wow.
And just, So food is a big deal in my family, and it's still, like my cousin, one of his projects was to put together a family recipes cookbook, because we've all got these recipes just kind of clogged up in our minds, but no one's ever bothered to put them into paper. And but being a part of that large family, it wasn't so much, I mean, you'd go to school and you'd hear kids talk about their brothers and sisters and moms and dads, and I'd talk about, well, my mom and dad and my sister and my brother and my cousins and my aunts and uncles, because it wasn't just, us. It was all of us. We were all in it together. We were all, it was daycare, it was playtime, it was all of that, and it was honestly a great thing to grow up into. And financially, if I could swing it, I would love to have had just a ton of kids, because just creating that environment again would be amazing. So
I would just like to go on the record. I think one of the saving things for my kids and the way that they've turned out so far, knock on wood, is the influence of cousins. There's something about Sunday dinner at grandma's house and cousins getting together and cousins supporting one another and having relationships and having that almost like a safety net, right? Like, I got your back. Really grateful for my kids' cousins.
Yeah, they are, and I mean, it's a lifelong connection, because, for example, my cousins are coming over to visit. Last year there was a wedding, and my sister, my aunt and uncle, all their kids came and stayed with us here.
Well, because you got that swimming pool, man.
Because we have the swimming pool in Reading.
You get the swimming pool, you're gonna get company.
So we're still, like, my sister still goes to dinner at my aunt and uncle's house. It's just they're all still very close, and it's an interesting time in my life, because now they're starting to pass, and it's very hard, because we just lost one a couple of weeks ago. My aunt passed away. She had a stroke, and it was like, wow, there were 11 and now there's 9, because my uncle died in a plane crash a couple of years ago. And it's just, okay, this is weird. This is an odd thing, because this has been a constant in my entire life, is there's been 11 of them, and they're always there. You can call them, and it's a very interesting crossroads in my life, where, okay, my family's going to start, this is the next thing, because my grandparents died, and that was big, because they were my grandparents. They were, they had 1 billion grandkids, but they were still very close with me. They were very, and it was like, okay, they're your grandparents. Grandparents die, you hear about that. But now aunts and uncles are dying, and it's going, this is weird. This just doesn't feel right yet. Like, I don't feel like I should be at that moment, but here we are. And
yeah.
How are you, how do you deal with that? And how do you teach your kids about that? That
is, to me, I don't know that I'm teaching my kids very well, to be entirely honest. It's because I don't know that I'm dealing with it well. That is something that I struggle with personally. That's something, I mean, it's death as a whole is something that it makes me extremely uncomfortable. Yeah. In fact, it was interesting because I was just talking to one of my technicians. His father passed, and I was like, just having this conversation and acting like a human is so distant for me, because normally someone would be like, oh, hey, my father passed. I'd be like, oh, that's a bummer. I feel, I'm sorry for your loss. And then I just try to find a way to get out of the conversation.
Right.
And
right.
So now I'm trying to force myself to face it and go, okay, how do I feel about this? And I mean, ultimately it's me trying to rationalize my own death. Cause I mean that, I'm middle-aged now. I'm 41. I've always told people if I make it to 82, I'll be a happy man, because my father died when he was 53 and his father died when he was 42. And I was like, if I can make it well beyond those hurdles, I've made it. And I'm halfway there, and I'm going, wait a second, maybe that hurdle needs to be pushed out a little further, because
yeah, it's like there's a John Mayer line, right? Trying to play the numbers game to try to find a way to say the life has just begun. Yeah. Right? And it's like we're trying to wait, that number is getting higher. I gotta put this in context. It's tough.
That's an interesting, I appreciate you sharing that, by the way, Casey. Thanks I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that question, but it's just interesting because, I've had a few people that I know whose parents have passed, and I've never thought about it before until that, especially recently. I had someone whose parents passed, and I just thought, I don't know if I'm ready to deal with something like that. In my mind, I've helped other people and that have gone through that, and I've felt fine. But then I sort of could see myself in that situation, and I was like, shoot, I don't know if I'm ready to fully deal with something like that.
I love the humanity of it. Like, right, you're just like, you're trying to be in these conversations instead of shedding them.
Yeah.
Instead of escaping them, right? Because I think these are worthy things to be thinking about, right? Because if it truly is this life that we've gotten, you got one, man, it would be great to be able to live every day with an idea of our own mortality, right? Because then you'd go, right?
Yeah, it's and like I said, it's something I still struggle with, because and here's the reason I struggle with it. I have pinpointed it. It's because my life is so wonderful. I have 3 children that I absolutely love. I have a wife that I'm absolutely in love with, that accents my weaknesses so well that I can't imagine life without them. And it's completely selfish, because it's not so much, oh, hey, they're going to miss out on me. It's, oh, hey, I'm going to miss out on them.
Right.
And it's that right there is, and it's such a weird concept, because I never imagined feeling that, because I told you I had a falling out with my father when I was about 12, 13. We didn't speak on a regular basis ever again. And that didn't strike me as odd at the time.
Okay, so put a pin in that for a second, because I want to talk about that. First of all, your comments about your wife and your children, to me, that's like the essence of this show, right? I mean, I love what you said, and it was beautifully said. And as you said it, I thought, yeah, I can. That just resonates with me, man. I love what you said.
And doesn't that make sense? If right now is so freaking sweet, why wouldn't you try to avoid every thought of it ending?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, right? Here we are, we're in our 40s, and you kind of have that thought, like, well, it could, right? At some point, it's going to. But I also have the thought that, I remember being in your spot, Casey, where my kids were your kids' age, and I loved it, man. I wouldn't have traded that for anything. And now here I am with my kids the ages they are now, and I love it. And I wouldn't change it for anything. And I can look down the road and I can see my kids with their kids. And I think, yeah, I'm excited about that. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting how we're, you can kind of project, and you're just like, man, life is sweet now. And if it's sweet now, how much sweeter can it be, as we continue down this road?
Well, and Tyler, you were talking about living that certain way, right? Trying to be that model. Can you imagine your model being copied in the lives of your children in front of your grandchildren?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how exciting is that? Right?
They can't be anything really better than that, as long as it's a good model.
Yeah.
Right? As long as it's a good model. But I can tell you right now, the other night, Kelly and I, we were talking, and I asked kind of a facetious question, but I was like, do you ever think we'll get old? Right. And she's like, yeah, we're going to get old. And I'm like, hell no. Right. Like, physically, yeah. Okay. I get it. I might be old, but I think of Paul Chamley, Tyler Gould, like my Uncle Paul, actually Kelly's Uncle Paul, was eternally young. Even juvenile at times.
Loved every second I
right. And it's like, can I be that? Like my Friday playlist is Jay-Z, Young Forever. Right. It's Van Halen right now. Can I be 70 and still rock that?
100%.
I can, right?
You can. I was just listening to an interview of a guy who was 87, and they said, how do you feel? And he said, like, I'm 22. My body, however, right?
Yeah,
I love that. I was like, I love that.
I'm
man.
good with I don't care with the body. I'm good with that. But like up here and in here, can I keep that fire, right? Can I keep that youth?
Casey, can we circle back to your dad for a second? You talked about that, not having that consistent contact or communication from a young age. Can you talk a little bit? I'm just curious about, and you can go as deep or as shallow as you want to go here, but I'm wondering how ultimately that experience has impacted your experience with your own family and how that's kind of shaped you a little bit.
And I would throw in there, how do you dad?
Yeah.
Right. Because we raise kids how we were raised. How do you dad? Yeah. Interested.
So my father had a mental issue. We called it manic depression when I was younger, but it's basically bipolar disorder. And so my parents divorced essentially right when I was born, because my dad had his first manic episode. I want to say it might have happened. I don't fully know the timeline of his episodes, but I know when I was introduced to them. So basically, they got divorced when I was basically born. My sister was like 3 or 4. One of my very first memories is visiting in a mental hospital in Eureka. And I just remember being enthralled that they had a ping pong table. But it never
remember.
Yeah, exactly, right? It never really dawned on me until, a much later age what that was. But basically he had these issues, and and I don't know how good things were back then, because this was 40 years ago, but he was prescribed lithium to keep himself on an even keel, and every once in a while he just wouldn't take it because for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he wouldn't take it, and he would have these episodes. And the first one that I really got to experience was when I was about 12 or 13. And it was very eye-opening. He went through all of the symptoms. He came over once, and he had followers. Like, I don't want to say a cult, but it wasn't just your normal friends that came over with him, because he was coming to take us, my sister and I, and they were like, why don't you want to go with him? He's amazing. They very much adored him, and it was a very weird scenario. We ended up not going with him, and that was the first experience I had with it, and I had a number after that. Basically, after the first experience, we had kind of allowed him back into our lives a little bit, because he was very, I don't even know how to describe it, how it felt dangerous. Like, it just felt like you were with a caged animal, or in the cage with an animal. Yeah. Like, you just felt like you didn't know how he was going to react in a situation.
Could turn on you at any minute.
Exactly. And so he gets back on his meds. He comes back around. We start hanging out again. And then it happens again about 1.5 to 2 years later. But this time it's very different. It's like we have to get a restraining order different. And it was, I don't know how he did it, but he was able to develop these relationships with people that were very, I don't want to say parasitic, but that's kind of what they were. Is basically he was a very talented man. He could build anything. He was a contractor by trade, and so he would get these jobs, and these people would just be amazed at what the remodel that he did, or whatever he was working on, and he would. I don't know how he would press it, but at one point he came over. He got violent at our house, the house that I grew up in, and he had done a job for a person around the block from us, and basically he just went around the block and stayed with this person. And the fear of having this caged animal that close to you that has a connection, a very strong connection to you, like a connection where they could take you and people would assume it's normal. It was just, it was extremely scary. And, you know, it draws back to that what I was saying about feeling anger at something at a young age and having that emotion overtake everything else. Whereas now that I'm older, I can see if you remove that anger, there was just a lot of fear. There was just a lot of, you know, there wasn't a lot of control on my side. There wasn't, you know, I was trying to have control of a situation that I physically could not have control over at that age. And those are the things that I remember about that time. And so it basically became a no contact situation where, you know, he'd get better and I'd hear from people that, oh yeah, he's better, you should try talking to him. And I mean, like I said, we never really had, up to that point, we were fairly consistent. We'd visit him on weekends. I'd go spend weeks with him at a time during the summertime. He was a very active part of my life. He, you know, we'd play Little League, he'd be there, you know, all that stuff. But after that point, it was like, we never had that connection ever again. And I regret that, especially now that I'm older and know more, because the last time I spoke with him, the very last time I spoke with him, I said, I want an apology from you for what you did. And he gave this very snarky, backhanded, well, I'm sorry that when I couldn't control myself, I hurt your feelings. Or I can't even exactly remember what he said, but it was very offhand. I'm not taking responsibility for it. And that was what I wanted from him. And that was it. That was the last time. And knowing now what I know about it, and not, it was once again one of those times where the anger overtook my logic of the situation. And looking back now, being able to explain what exactly I wanted from him, and just the loss of the relationship that we had over something that he essentially had zero control over. And I'm not forgiving him per se, but I am forgiving him. You know, there are certain things that I did expect from him, but I could have come about them in a different manner. I feel like I could have gotten my point across a little bit better, and we could have reached a peaceful time. Yeah. And he died about 6 months before my oldest daughter was born, and it was a relief moment for me at the time, but now it's more of a, man, what a missed opportunity.
How do you reconcile that relationship now?
So ultimately, it's taken quite a bit of therapy, which I've been in for like 3 years, which is basically what started all the meditation and things of that nature. But it helped me understand, one, the scientific side of his mental health problems.
Yeah.
But it also helped me to understand that he did have a responsibility to me and to my older sister to be a parent, and he was not that. You know, that even at his best moments, he was not what I strive to be.
So where does the strive come from?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when we think about models and we think about patterns and examples, there's a lot of people whose stories don't take the trajectory that yours did. Right?
So you're asking me where did the model come from?
Yeah, where did this striving come from to be better?
100% those family members that I was talking about earlier. I had so many role models there that that gave me the pattern to follow, this is what this should look like. It may not be perfect, it may not be what it could be, but it is a lot better than what you got. And it was those strengthened relationships. I had an Uncle Tony. He died of cancer about 5-6 years ago. And here's the funny part about all of this is all of these men were friends with my father. They were fairly close with him, and it's what had caused me a lot of heartache and grief in hearing stories about my dad before he had me, because he didn't have any of the weird mental issues.
Right. It hadn't manifested themselves.
It hadn't manifested quite yet. So, but anyway, they were able to model what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It was the loving paternal figure. And so, I mean, I have an Uncle Tony, I have an Uncle Chris, I have an Uncle Gabe, I have an Uncle Terry. All of these men stepped into that role in different ways, and they really shaped that for me. And I mean, some of them don't even have kids. Like my Uncle Gabe doesn't even have any kids, and still just
Casey, what do you, when your kids ask about your dad, what's the conversation like? And Mike, I get, maybe I'd ask you the same question. I mean, I go back to
Casey's earlier answer. It's always truth.
Yeah.
Right. Age appropriate. But it's always truth.
Yeah.
There's no glorification. There's no sugarcoating things.
It's interesting because we all have relationships, right, in our lives that are complicated, right? And there's a lot of stuff that goes into them, and as I think there's been relationships that I've had when I was younger that I thought, no way, man, like I'm not allowing that. There's hard lines in my life. These things are not allowed, and I won't accept. As I've gotten older, I think I've deconstructed those walls a little bit on some of those, and I've had instances where I've shared the good that I remembered, right? I still give the whole picture, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's at some point in my life, I'm in a hope that somebody says, well, let me tell you about some of the good things about Tyler. Because we could talk about the bad things all day long, right? There's a pretty good healthy list,
truth, right? I think that's part of truth, and it's like people are complicated, and we're never as bad as the worst thing we've ever done, and we're never as good as the best thing we've ever done.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting, Casey. Your dad, right? There was all these tough things that he was dealing with, and you were dealing with as a child, and yet when you talk to your uncles, right, they have these like really good stories about him. It's so complex, right? It's just so interesting that how complex that is, right? Because for me, when I was younger, it was easier to look at things and say, okay, this person is in this category, and that's that, right? That's where they live, and that's where they'll be, right? But now as I'm older, I'm like, shoot, that person is in a lot of different categories. They fit in a lot of different places.
That is 100% it. That is, I mean, because that is, for many, many years, I'm talking 20 years almost, I put him in this category of this is who he is. And it's taken me a long time to realize that no, that was just a part of who he was. There was also this caring part. There was also this extremely intelligent part that, like I said, he was an amazing builder. The guy, he could build anything. Some of the things he built he built a tree house that took into account how far the tree would sway in the wind.
Oh, and that's awesome.
It was,
that's awesome.
Some of the things he would build were just absolutely amazing. And those are the pieces that I forgot due to that anger. And so to have the stories come around of these were the good pieces of him, and these are the good pieces of him that we see in you. That was very important.
Yeah. So, that's interesting, because I think that's the interesting part, right? Is that too, as I get older, like there's people that I had categorized in certain columns, right? I said, this is this person, that's what they are. And now I'm of a certain age, and I go, I see some of them in me, right? And some of it's the bad part, and some of it's the good part, but I can see all of those parts, how they make me who I am. Does that make sense?
100%. I know exactly. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Is there's a part of me that gets up, and there's a part of me that gets down, and I can recognize that, because of my dad.
Yeah.
Because I know, okay, I don't hit the highs and lows the way he did, but I can tell that there are times when I'm very energetic and I'm up. I am. I can handle any problem you throw at me. And there are times that I'm down where I'm just like, why am I doing any of this? I should be living in a trailer in Mexico somewhere by myself.
And you know what's crazy about that is,
but you hold them both, right? You hold them both.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing is that you've got, we kind of categorize people, and now you can recognize things about yourself that you have a better grip on than maybe your dad did or someone else, right? And it's because of their experiences, right? I mean, it's just interesting, right? Like, they lived the life, they went through those things, they were difficult, whatever that experience was that maybe negatively impacted us at a certain point in our lives. And now here you are at 41 years old, and you can, when you're high or low, you're like, oh yeah, I know where this is coming from, because I saw it here. And I just think that's fascinating, that even though, some of those negative experiences sometimes we have in our lives, they circle back, and we're like, oh yeah, this is why, maybe now I know why I experienced that, and why I had to witness that, because I can be a little more empathetic. I can be a little more compassionate. I can be a little more self-aware, right? In those circumstances. It's interesting.
So can I go back to something you shared? We are huge proponents of therapy. That is one of the things that I think we're trying to take a sledgehammer to. Any kind of stigma associated with reaching out and asking for help is ridiculous, right? And so you shared the how important that was in kind of your journey. What led to that decision to seek therapy?
The birth of my third child.
Okay.
It's almost hard to talk about, because it doesn't feel in any way, shape, or form that way anymore. But and I was not suicidal by any means, but I was obviously very depressed.
Right.
Do you remember those commercials where they were talking about suicide, and it was, I feel like I could leave and you wouldn't need me, like you wouldn't even notice I was gone. And I was not suicidal in any way, shape, or form, but I totally felt like my family was just moving along without me. And I didn't feel connected to Hannah as well as I was connected to my other two children. And that worried me, that scared the crud out of me, because it was very reminiscent of how I felt about my dad, because I disconnected from him so hard that it was, and this is where therapy has helped me immensely, because there was a time in my life that I could have literally cut any single person or group out and been completely okay with it, or what appeared to be okay with it. And I felt like it was close, but not there with my family, with my wife and kids. And that scared the crud out of me. Like, it literally scared me. And so we had a work number. Basically, it's like a a health line at work where you can call
employee assistance program.
That employee assistance program, EAP program. And I called them, and I did it. I didn't even talk to Tracee about it. I just did it. And after I did it, I was like, okay, I've got a direction to kind of go here. And after I did that, I was like, hey, I told Tracee, I was like, listen, this is where I'm at, and it feels weird, and this is what I'm doing. I don't want you to freak out about it, but I need some help because I don't know where I'm at. And so Hannah's 3, and I've been in therapy since very shortly after she was born, so about 3 years.
Man, kudos to you.
I love the courage.
Yeah.
Right? The courage of making the phone call, the courage of having, because Tyler, we've talked about this, like letting your partner in on the fact that you don't know where you're at right now is hard.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Somewhere we went to man school or something, and we have this idea that we're supposed to have it all figured out. We're supposed to have all the answers, that we're supposed to be somebody's rock. And in the end, we're not. Right? Sometimes the best of us aren't too great. And we need help, right? We need to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, we need to be able to, I honestly, I was looking at somebody's Facebook post. So there are good things out there with Facebook, and somebody was just putting out, hey, anybody struggling with this? I know a guy. Right? And when you look at the list of the things you're struggling with, it's like, man, yeah. Those are real struggles that I deal with, right? That we all deal with. And I can't get, like, I don't think we can say it enough, Tyler. Like, it does help.
Yeah, and I would also, yeah, and I think too, we've talked to a lot of different people over the years and doing this podcast that have found themselves in therapy, and a lot of them gotten there different ways, right? A partner has said, hey, we need to think about some different resources, or a family member, or they've just thought to themselves, I need some help. And I would just say, man, regardless of how you get there, it's just that you get there. Right? The
stakes are too high. Like you said, Tracee, like 100%. Scared you to death that you could lose everything.
Yeah. And the weirdest part is I had like I was talking about the fear of death. Like, it's the fear of missing out, of being with my family, to go from where I was at to here. And because I've been here before, I had never been there before. Mm-hmm. And it was so weird and jarring. And yeah, it wasn't something that I was willing to allow. And so that was where it came from. And I can't remember what question it was, but it was something, that is the one thing that I absolutely want to impress upon people, is that it's okay to reach out, and please do so, because it's absolutely needed. It's so important to figure out where you're at.
I appreciate that message, and that's important, and for people to hear, because like I said, there's a stigma attached to that.
Yeah, and to also understand that the people that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis could be in those spots, right? And
we're all dealing.
To see people as they're dealing, and to be, part of the folks that help, right? The lighten burdens, not add to. Do no harm. Rule number 1, right? If we can pick up a load somewhere, help somebody else out, by all means, that I think that's our obligation, especially when we've been there. And there's that empathy to be able to say, hey, I understand, and I'm going to be moved with compassion to do something about it to help out.
Hey, Casey, what is fatherhood teaching you about yourself?
One, it's taught me that I'm a lot smarter than I thought I was.
Give it a few years, then they're gonna remind you that you're not.
Oh, believe me.
They do keep score. They keep score.
They do keep score.
My oldest is getting into classes where I'm going, I didn't take this till high school, and you're going into sixth grade. What's going on? But no, it's that I'm a lot smarter than I thought I was. I'm a lot more compassionate than I thought I was, or I have the power to be a lot more compassionate than I was. I'm not going to say that there aren't times that I fail in that regard. The thing that amazes me the most is that I get a lot of compliments about just in general how good my kids are, and that is a reflection of parenting. And I mean, it's arrogant to say that, but I feel like that I'm part of that. And so
we were just talking about that, Tyler. Right?
Yeah.
Just talking about that. People coming to you like they got kid problems, and like coming to you like you've got all the answers because your kids don't necessarily have some of the problems that they're dealing with. And it's like, well, I can walk you through some of the things that I do. I don't know if it's research based, but
I just give them my wife's phone number. Talk to my wife.
But it's definitely, it's hard, not as hard as I thought it was, but infinitely harder than I thought it was at the same time. It is something I absolutely love and enjoy doing. It's really opened up. One of the things I've learned from it, I guess, is that I love to be a mentor. I've signed up for a mentor program at work where because I've been in leadership for so many years that, we have a lot of people in the leadership field retiring. We're trying to bring new blood into the fold. And so it's kind of like, yeah, throw my name out there. I'll gladly meet with anybody for however long they want and talk to them about their career and what they want to do and how to best assert themselves to reach their goals and things of that nature. And it really, fatherhood has shown me that I want to take on that role of guidance and just being that person.
I love that. Yeah, I love.
Can we talk a little bit about how Tracee enters your life?
Oh, absolutely.
How did you guys meet?
So back before Facebook, there was a little app called MySpace.
MySpace.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
this is a MySpace success story.
This episode is brought to you by the archive files of MySpace.
I
love it.
And we had a mutual connection on MySpace, and basically it was a friend of mine that they had like a bachelor pad that they were always throwing parties at, and so I asked him about this girl that he was friends with. I was like, she's kind of cute. And he was like, oh, yeah. And then randomly, like a week and a half later, I went out to dinner with him, another friend, and then this girl that he was kind of seeing. And I'd never really met her. And so we just kind of hung out and had dinner. Well, that was my wife's best friend over on the coast.
Oh, no way.
And so she was kind of going, okay, yeah, I met him. He's not that bad. You should try to meet him. And then we just met at a party, and we just kind of clicked. And it was actually funny because at the party, I thought things were going well, and then there was another guy there that I thought was kind of interested in her, and he worked with her, and I was like, well, I don't necessarily want to get into a battle with somebody else trying to see this girl. Well, she called me, or I can't remember if she called me or she messaged me, but she messaged me and asked me out the next week, and from there we just kind of clicked and kept going.
You want to drop his name or no? Are you a bigger man than that?
I can't even remember his name, to be entirely honest. And to be fair, we actually hung out quite a bit after that because, they were work friends, and he's not a bad guy. He's married now, has kids.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just,
and he's got to respect the game, respect the game.
game respects game.
That's right, man.
So, hey, Casey, so I asked this because we're a step ahead of you with the daughters, right? We've got daughters, and we've got We've got kids that are coming into this season of time where they might be going to parties and meeting their future husbands and wives, right? So can you look back and can you paint a picture of how you knew it was Tracee? Like, how did you know this was going to be something more than just, a girlfriend?
Well, she was very direct. She was very early on in our relationship. She was like, listen, I want to get married and I want to have kids. And I understand if you don't, but if you don't, I don't want to continue with you, because flat out, she's like, I'm not playing any games. That this is where I'm at in life. And if you're not moving in that direction, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be, in 8 months, 10 months, a year, whatever, but it does need to be on your horizon. And I was like, it is on my horizon. We'll see how it goes. And I was just like, wow, that was pretty hardcore. And about 3 months into it, I remember thinking, wow, I think I'm in love with her, but I had never really experienced that. And I didn't really understand it. And I didn't really want to be like, I didn't want to just be like, oh, hey, guess what? I'm in love with you. And it's only been 3 months and I'm going to freak you out and you're going to run away. And we went up to a place called the Trees of Mystery, and it's like in Klamath.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a walk, and they have this little thing that you carve your name into if you and your love's name into, And I was like, I jokingly said, should I carve our names in there? And she goes, well, do you love me? And I was like, I don't know. And she goes, well, I have pretty strong feelings for you. And I'm like, holy shit, wow, this is we're both there. I'm not gonna lie, I was too chicken to do it, but
you didn't carve the name.
I didn't, but it wasn't long after that, we were saying it, and so it was. I want to say 6 months in that I was going, she is absolutely something special. And as I said, all of my attributes, all of my negatives, she is a positive too. There are so many things in my life that I would not be without her. When we met, I was an IT person. I literally just sat at a desk and troubleshot desktops and networks and different things like that. I'd had a background in cable, but I was basically just in this weird position that had a future, but didn't necessarily have a future with the company I was in. And I remember, I wasn't getting paid very much doing it. And 6 months, I can't even remember how long it was, but it was like 6 months into it, I was going, okay, I need to go back to being an installer because I need to make more money. And from there will be better opportunity. And if I hadn't met her, I don't know that I would have done that. And here's the kicker to it that is just absolutely mind-blowing to me, is that if I hadn't done that, because I immediately was, at the time, the company I was working for had a lot of turnover. So they were looking for people that knew the job and knew how to do the job and could train other people to do the job. So I instantly became a mentor and a trainer. And like 3 or 4 months in that position, leadership was saying, hey, we have another supervisor position that's opening up. We think you should apply for it. And that has been my career. That has been what has enabled me to have the life I have. And it never would have happened had I not met Tracee. It's just, it as you guys say, those hinge moments or whatever you called them, it was 100% one of those. I mean, it's my life as I know it would be so different in a negative manner if I had not met her.
I love that.
So
go ahead, Mike.
Now, we talked about so many important people in your life. Is there anybody, as you sit looking back on your life, that you would like to honor in this space in our time together?
Well, definitely my mom and stepdad. when I was going through the troubles with my father, my stepdad really stepped in to fill part of that role. And he was very accepting to me. And I'm not going to say he doesn't have flaws and, things that he wasn't perfect, but he definitely filled a role that was absolutely needed. And because without that, I don't know, without their guidance, in very specific moments in my life, I know that I would also not be here.
Yeah.
It's and like I said, they're not perfect. They definitely didn't do things the way that I want to do them, but they were definitely there when it needed to be. And so, yeah.
Casey, where you sit in your life right now, what gives you hope?
My oldest daughter gives me a lot of hope. She is absolutely something amazing. She is more intelligent than I could ever dream of being, and she's more compassionate at 11 years old than I could ever have imagined being even now. She has such a moral compass about what is right and what is wrong that I have no idea where she learned it from. Because we're talking to the point where we'll go to the movies and I'll go, hey, let's stop by Target and get some snacks. Can you do that? I don't think we should do that. You don't sneak things into movie theaters, you buy it from the movie theater. And I'm just going, that's instinct for you. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she gives me so much hope in the future, just being around her. And not to say my other kids aren't amazing, because they are. They're just not at an age where they have that, where they're taking on their own lives, I guess.
Right. Where that's more developed at that. Yeah.
So,
Casey, can you paint me a picture? So you've got a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things happening in your life. Can you paint me a picture of a memory, of a moment where you looked around and you said, this is rich, where you truly felt rich?
So I don't know. The times that I feel richest are literally these weird white noise moments that I have with my family. When we're all in the car going somewhere, having some stupid conversation about some song that my middle child wants to put on her Apple playlist. Can I help her find it? Or when I've gone and picked up my oldest from dance and we're driving home and it's just me and her in the car and we're talking about anything, or working on a math problem or spelling words. It's those moments that I feel the most rich and happy. And those moments of contentment we were talking about earlier, where it's like, being content with what you have, that is absolutely that time when we're sitting back in the backyard in the pool, just, hey, look, I'm going to do a front flip in the water. Those are the moments that I feel the most rich. And in the car, it seems to be the most, because there's nothing else going on. You're in a confined space, you're getting somewhere, and you're just talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And those small moments, and they can be, and you and I have had this conversation where you can guide the conversation into the moment, the teachable moment, and taking those moments and not even turning them into a majorly teachable moment, but a minor teachable moment of just, yeah, this is how I would handle that situation. Or, these are the things going on in your life that I do recognize as being very important, and I'm very proud of you, and those are the moments that I absolutely feel the most rich.
See, this is the purpose, Tyler Gould, of the Richest Men in Town podcast, because I guarantee you, you're exactly right, Casey, and 20-year-old Mike Freeman, that is not what I would have described as rich.
For sure.
Right?
Oh, I absolutely.
There's that contrast of like, man, if we can have folks truly understand what this thing is about, what it's really about. And that leads us to the last question, right? And it is lined up with those rich moments, but the show is called The Richest Men in Town, Casey. We've been hanging out a couple hours, and I honestly feel, Tyler, that we have scratched the surface barely here talking to Casey. But as we wrap things up, we always wrap it up with the same question. At the end of the movie, It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey wants to live again, right? And George Bailey comes to his senses and he understands, he gains some perspective of just how rich he has it. Even though none of his problems have really gone away, he wants to go right back to them. And Harry Bailey comes into town, right? The little brother war hero. And he comes in and raises a glass to his big brother, George, and toasts him as the richest men in town. Tyler and I love that thought. We love the irony behind that thought. And we always ask our guests. So to you, I'll close it with this question, Casey. What does it mean to you to be the richest man in town?
So to be the richest man in town, you have to have true relationships with some people. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but for me, I have got a spectacular group of friends. I've got 3 friends that I talk
Shout
with.
Shout them out.
Justin Pabalotti, Jake Hayes, and Brad Dodson. I am on a text group with them. We get together. We don't get together anywhere near as much as we could, but those guys are the absolute best friends that I could ever possibly have. And then to shift and then also have my family, just to have those relationships. That is what does it. I mean, just thinking through the times that I've been able to spend, the small times that I get to spend with them and the small times that I get to spend with my family, where it can be meaningful or it doesn't have to be meaningful, is the greatest moments in my life. And yes, there's all the other problems and all the other things that go wrong, but you don't live for those. You live for those other moments with your friends and family.
I love it, man. I tell you what, Casey, we've spent 2 hours. Mike, this has been a study in a rich life, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to meet you, to spend some time with you. I'm grateful for Mike for the introduction, and I'm grateful for your family. You know, I love listening to you talk about your kids. It's inspiring. You're fired up, and it fires me up, and I appreciate your energy, man. Keep on doing what you're doing. This was a blast tonight.
So Tyler, literally, I've said this before in previous episodes, but when we have eyes to look around, we have people living rich lives all around us, even right next door. So Casey Kelly, my next door neighbor, I appreciate you. I loved what you shared. I'm with you, Tyler, listening to Casey live his life, right? Talking about his girls, talking about Tracee. It just makes me want to be better. Makes me want to be a better dad, a better husband. And that's the game, right? That's the game. So tomorrow we're going to wake up and we're going to give it another go, right? And we might make mistakes and we might step in it. We're going to make things right. We're going to move on, but we're going to live this thing because we got one. So Casey Kelly, thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep going, right? Keep going. We're not done. You're definitely not done. You got lots of little league games, lots of dances, lots of things still coming at you. So
miles to go
before we sleep.
That's right. Hey, Casey, it's been fun, man. We appreciate you. Make sure you tell Tracee we said thank you for letting us have you for the last couple hours.
No problem. Thanks again for having me on. I really enjoyed it. I like I said, I was kind of surprised to get the invite, but I'm real glad that I got it. So
don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when the other invite comes to come back.
You belong in this seat, my friend. You belong in this seat. So, hey, thanks, Casey. Have a good night.
You too.
Ernie, a toast. To my big brother, George, the richest man in town.